Oh, you guys, I'm so glad we're here tonight, and we're here to celebrate you and your book. Wow. Woo! Oh my gosh. What does this feel like to be celebrating the launch of a book? And did you guys notice that the Disney boat, we queued it to launch? I mean, it cost some money, but you're worth it, girl.
It feels fantastic. This has been the longest pregnancy of my life. Just a book in process for a long time. So you guys are so kind to come out. I can't believe it. I feel like doing a tap dance, but I'm not able.
Hey, tell us when you're writing a book, and I know there's some of you that are authoring, not a word, but it should be. But you're authoring this book. Why did you decide this book at this time?
This book is about grace, and I've had this funny kind of, speaking of tap dancing, I've been tap dancing with that word for a really long time. And here's what I mean. I've been doing a lot of nodding about the idea of grace, but when it came down to actually letting it seep into my heart, I thought that cannot possibly be true, right? It can't possibly be true that I would get this unfettered, beautiful freedom from God and not have to do something for it, because I have to do stuff everywhere else, right? You had to pay for your parking. Sorry about that. You know, I had to get on a plane today and do all the right things and put my tray table up, and then I got to go. And everywhere else in my life, I have to work for something. And so when God says, no, really, I actually did all of this, you're all done, I think I just have been politely nodding for a long time, but inside not believing him at all. And then the other part of why I wrote this book is because I think we need to laugh more. I don't think we laugh enough in our lives. So.
Yeah, amen to that. The subtitle, Star for Jesus and Other Jobs I Quit. I know that one of the best parts of writing a book is you get to name it. You figure it out if it's a boy or a girl, and then you find a name for it. But a subtitle says a lot because you're trying to explain the book. What were you trying to communicate?
Yeah, the subtitle is where you pack the punch, right? You can do lots of things with the title, but the subtitle is Rediscovering the Grace that Sets Us Free. So I'm into freedom. I've tasted it now, and so now I can't go back. And then, you know, if you pair a serious subtitle with an unfortunate photo of yourself on the cover, then people are intrigued enough at least to stop and look. My good friend Taylor a couple weeks ago said, that photo does imply that you did escape from an underground bunker. And that is incorrect. I was never in a bunker, but that was my 8th grade graduation. They photoshopped a pink Bible on the top. It used to be black. Did I tell you this?
No.
And the first one, the black one, I said, this is too cultish. It looks like I'm about to raise a candle and pass out some Kool-Aid. So we said no to that. Pink made it funnier. So.
Yeah, I know faith can be, and I know for a lot of you, faith leads your steps and guides you, but can also be kind of complicated in the way that it's executed as a community, because we're all like insecure and kind of ricocheting off each other. And so what has been your experience? Like, why did you think that I want to like kind of dispel a couple myths? What were those?
Yeah, the star was number one. So when I was in elementary school, I was a part of, well, I call it fake Girl Scouts. It was Jesus Girl Scouts, and I won't tell you the real name because you might have been in it too. And I loved, my individual teachers were wonderful. I'm saying that on record. Please don't be emailing me, Jean. However, it was this club where we would go, and it was on Wednesday nights, and like real Girl Scouts would like learn how to, you know, build a fire or braid their hair or sell cookies, crochet, something we could use. We didn't do any of that fun stuff. We only checked boxes. We read the Bible and checked a box for each chapter. And then sometimes we'd serve people, but mostly we read the Bible. And I love the Bible. I have rooted myself in what it says. But somewhere along the line, I don't think they said this to me, but I decided that the box checking was the point. So if I could just make my way through that and jump high enough and get that done, then that would make me a star. And that's because that was the goal. If you got through the whole binder, you could be a star. And of course, I'm a firstborn female. I was going to be a star. So I did, like, they give you a satin cape. This is dead serious. It's a candlelit ceremony. There's a candelabra. Yep, I promise it was. Now I'm sounding like it wasn't
It
cold.
really does. I'm a little. I see people slowly moving back. Yeah.
And then we went into the bunker and we learned how to make chili.
Sometimes we write out of our life experiences. This clearly is one of your life experiences. But sometimes you encounter just immense grace from someone that really impacted you. Do people come to mind that in circumstances where that was a pivotal moment, maybe as you're growing up or afterwards?
Growing up, for sure, my grandma. So my grandma was scrappy and sassy, and she loved Jesus. And I didn't know what a gift that was until I was much older. I could go to her with any question when I got to college and was just overall mean and would happily blamed my parents for everything going wrong in my life, which is nonsensical. Grandma was a safe place where I could ask all the craziest questions, and she would, I'm sure inside she was going, but outside she'd say, that was a wonderful question. Or she'd say, there's no question that's going to scare God. I'm glad you're asking these. And I'm sure she turned around and was like, alert, alert. But she was a wonderful example of that, sassy and loved Jesus. And then in my adulthood, my husband has shown a ton of grace to me and does every day, including this morning. And actually, you're not going to like me saying this, Bob, but you have shown a ton of grace to me. Maria has shown a ton of grace to me. When we define grace as something unearned, undeserved, just with no strings attached, boundless love and kindness that we don't have to work for, you guys do that in spades.
Think for all of you, somebody that has intersected your life, that has been like really pivotal. There's a moment, there was this time where you just had messed up and they just were there for you. They just saw you in a different way than everybody else did. Maybe send them a text tonight, send them a little note to say, man, that really mattered. I was with a group of friends. We were thinking about that. I think about grace. I had the privilege of writing the foreword to this. And forewords take a minute because you don't want to do a bad job for a friend. And I was thinking about when I was in high school, I turned 16, and 16 years and 1 minute later, my parents let me throw all of my gear in the back of my Volkswagen and drive 7 hours to the mountains to go backpacking. I'd never been on the highway before. And so I got bored easily. How many of you get bored easily? Yeah, I'm just like so bored. And so I pull right behind this 18-wheeler and I'm thinking, I wonder how close I would need to get for that to suck me along. This is why young men are uninsurable. And so I got within a foot or two of the back of the 18-wheeler. I put it in neutral and went for the next 2 hours, just sucked behind him. Now, it was a bad idea, but that is what grace does. It just creates, it creates this vortex that just sucks you along. I see some people in this room that have just been particularly good at that in my life. Sweet Maria is one of them. But they just creates this vacuum that sucks you in. Tell me the hardest part about grace, though. Like, so you take this deep dive and you write this book about grace. I bet it was hard because you're in a traffic jam and you're like, you want to hit the horn, but you feel like, I'm like writing this book about grace. What's the push and pull of that for you?
Totally. First, I would love to see a show of hands. How many people have a hard time imagining Bob with his flaming red hair in high school careening up the highway? Anybody? No one. Everybody's easy. Yeah, you're asking a question from this very week because now this book is coming out and I'm totally toast. Because now I have to be like the grace girl in public. This is just, you're the love guy.
Oh, yeah, I'm the love guy. Love doesn't? Some people sometimes.
Totally. That's about for us in my life, this is the drop-off lane at school. Does anybody else want to forsake all that they know about Jesus when they're at the place where you drop off your kids? People forget humanity. They cut you off, they scream at you. I've seen some fingers at like 8:20 in the morning. And that's in my car. And so this is going to be a liability. I'm serious. And that's really it, right? Like, it sounds great and I want it for me, but it's harder for the people in my life. In Iowa, we use this word doink. I would like you to try it. Doink.
Doink.
Say it with consonants. Doink.
Doink.
Yeah, you know them. So the doink in your life is the difficult person. And typically, it's easier for me to show grace to to someone who's anonymous, right? So we love helping out in our community, and then we go home. And so the outward grace doesn't cost me as much as the people who are close to me, or the people in the carpool lane, or the really difficult person who shares my bloodline, right? So I'm finding that when you're road testing grace, it gets a little bit tougher when it's the people who stick around. And it's harder for them to give it to me too. So, but if we persist in that and we stick around and we really do let that, as Bob would say, become a river, not a reservoir, then good things happen, right? That's the richest kind of friendship or relationship you have, when it's this tug and pull of grace, not just in the carpool lane, but with the people who are semi-doinks.
Yeah. And sometimes coming up with just a hack for yourself to kind of call yourself out on this thing. I find myself, if I'm speaking somewhere, if I find myself talking about the guy I wish I was someday rather than the guy I am right now, what I'll do is I'll clap my hand. Like, I don't make a big deal about it, but if you ever see me speaking and I go like that, I just called out my ish. I'm like, oh, no. That's not who I am. That's who I would like to be. I'd aspire to be to that person, but I ain't there now. And so just coming up with some way that does it. And don't beat yourself up. Like, we talk about that all the time. Like, we're not piñatas, right? And when you hit yourself, it is not candy that comes out. It's other stuff. And so what I want to do is just find a gracious way with yourself to call yourself out and to say, hey, I still aspire to be that person. Not quite there yet. What's your growing edge right now? Growing edge. Like, what's that part in your character that you're trying to develop? You talked about this idea of grace, but it's a big accomplishment. I mean, it's a kind of a scary thing to put it out there in front of God and everybody to say, here's my book on that. Do you have like some reservations? Do you have do you fear rejection? Do you what goes through the mind of an author releasing a book?
100%. I decided not to do this anymore, Bob, and you convinced me I should write another book. And so all of that's coming up. It's coming up again. I've called I have a very dear friend who I call and freak out with. And usually what comes up for me is, did I do it right? And more than that, am I doing enough? Which, not so ironically, has everything to do with grace. So for sure, this is my first book, not of fake people. So I've written a bunch of novels, and there's a little bit of a security with that because I can just make them, unfortunately escape in season 4, which really just means I kill them off. And it's so easy because I made them up. There's so much, they're not me, they're not my family, they're not my heart. And so this book has required me to stick around. I was probably 4 or 5 chapters in and I thought, oh no. What have I done? There's nowhere to run. And now that it's coming out, it absolutely pings all of the, did I say too much? Is this going to be a vulnerability hangover for the rest of my life? But I feel like every time we do that, the payoff is just so beautiful. And I'm sure you've seen that in your own life. When you take the risk to say, I'll go first, me too, something really beautiful happens. I don't think I'm the only one who's been busy performing for Jesus. I don't think I am. I don't think I'm the only one who has a hard time with the difficult people in my life. I don't think I'm the only one who has seen grace warped, the word grace warped or weaponized. I don't think I'm the only one. So I feel joy stepping into that space as much as I feel trepidation, because I know that on the other side of that is freedom.
Yeah, and there's the people and the circumstances are kind of low hanging fruit, where grace is super easy. It isn't costly. It doesn't involve vulnerability. And then there's the time of entering into that mess and to say you're going to be misunderstood along the way. And so some of us stay away from it because you just don't want to get any on you. All the crazy that's happening, you go like, yikes! I don't want to get any of that crazy on me. Like, amen. And so get real with that and just say, you know what? I'm going to take my next courageous step. And like God creates, but he never compares what he creates. So he didn't compare your step with your step or your step with your step, but to say, I'm going to take my next courageous step. So sometimes that's a call. If you want to put wheels when you read it, don't just agree, because I don't think you wrote this book so people would agree with you. I think the idea is to actually then do it. So, what would be a grace filled step? Maybe somebody who's hurt your feelings. Maybe there's been this big setback. Here's the thing, too, it doesn't make you the hero to do it, and it doesn't make you the victim if you don't. But if you do, it makes you a participant. And I'm not looking for victim and I'm not looking for hero, but actually, I think God's hoping that we'll participate and we'll just do that. So, what would be your advice to somebody who wants to actually put wheels on grace? Give me some examples of things that you're doing now, just practical steps that you can do to get a little bit more grace filled.
Well, here's what I've been up to. I've been looking behind me. I've been looking at my story and trying, and it's actually not that tough when you start. You can see this thread of grace in your life all over the place. I don't think it's an accident that about 850 million times in scripture, God says, remember who you are. Remember, I'm the one who brought you out of Egypt. Remember, 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 right? Like it's all the time. You start to think, does he not know he already said this? And or maybe I just do. See? There's a problem. There's a problem in Star Girl Scouts. Excuse me. Doesn't okay. So he says this all the time. Remember, remember, look back, remember. And I'm finding that when I'm doing that, there is this thread to pull through the whole darn thing. This isn't new. And what happens when I see that, if I pluck it out and turn it in the light, it blossoms, first of all. And second of all, it makes me remember, oh, that's right. Oh, that's right. God is good. Oh, that's right. This is actually who I am. I am totally uninterested this time in my Amazon reviews. I won't read one. I hope you leave a lovely one with a lot of stars. However, I won't read them because, first of all, I can't do a darn thing about it. It's already in print. And second of all, that's not who I am. I am not what people say about me. You are not what people say about you. You are what the God of the universe made you to be. So much better. We don't need the review. So I would say the more I lean into that and look behind me and see all of the spaces and places where God has been so kind to me, I don't know, my shoulders relax. I stand differently in my own life. I'm not having to corral anything or force anything. I just get to say, oh, look at that. Look at that wake of awesomeness that God has given. I'm good. I'm good. It's a Tuesday.
I'm thinking of a friend I know in Washington, D.C., who is known as being a really grace filled guy. And I was standing in this office talking to him, and a guy named Dick Halverson, who'd been the chaplain of the Senate for years and years and years, came in. He had just retired, and And he said, you know what? I want you to have my watch. He said to this friend of mine, he took this watch off his wrist, gave it to him. My buddy put it on and he said, wow, man, this means a lot to me. And then Dick left. A few minutes later, another person came in and they said, that's a nice watch. And he took it off without saying a word and he gave it to him. He said, I want you to have this. It's just another manifestation of grace that you just let things flow through you, beautiful things that have happened in your life. You just, again, rivers, not reservoirs. Well, Kim, congratulations. You did it. This is such a neat celebration. We are so thrilled. And I think you're going to just touch countless lives. And I know it's really difficult and tedious work. But we're going to invite Taylor up here, and he's going to help us with a Q&A, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So we would love to know what questions you all have about this subject, about Kim's book, about writing a book yourself. Is there anybody who would be brave enough to come up and speak in this microphone for just a moment? And when I say brave enough, this is not a testimony time. I'm sure
When I was an embryo.
amazing things are happening in your life, but we've all been to that event, and this is not that event. So when you come up, if you could say, hi, my name is, and my question for Kim is this, and that would be awesome. Sound good?
My name is Ross, and I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having us. And my question for you is, as someone who aspires to auth, where do you start? Where do you take that idea from your heart to your head to paper, and then how do you lay the tracks for it to come out in a productive and constructive way?
Well, I don't know how productive or constructive I was. It's pretty circuitous. I think Bob would say the same thing. You usually don't have a linear, now I will write a book, and in 4 weeks, here it is. That has not been my experience. As for the idea, I look for something that just will not leave me alone. Like I'm talking about it with friends. I bring it up a lot. Every time anybody mentions this idea, I perk up. I get sassy about it, or my heart races about it. Those are usually good signs for me. And then I look for the best stories I've ever told or lived, and then try to loop all of that together. It's not a very clean process, but if you stick with it, it usually works.
Yeah, I would say I'm not much of a hunter, but if I were hunting pheasant, I would lead the pheasant. I would aim it in front of it, not where it was and not where it is right now, but where it's headed. So I would find books that I would write would be where I think culture is headed. So I'd say, what will be a year and a half from now? Where's everybody going to be at? And kind of lead the pheasant and to say, that's a gestation period. You can make a radish in 20 days, but it takes about a year and a half to get a book out there. And also, I would try to have things that are the book I need. So if I wrote a book undistracted, it's because I get distracted easily. If I wrote a book about, or available, because I'm trying to change the definition of how and in what ways. So Ross, I would say, take those things where you're headed, not where you are right now, but where you're headed, and to write into it, because it'll actually be your head's on a swivel. You'll find the stories that either support or negate the premise of the book, and they just capture all those. Great question.
Ross, I happen to know you a little bit, and I know that you and your wife are both two of the most creative people I've ever known. And so sometimes creativity can paralyze you a little bit because you have so many ideas. So my heartfelt cry for that would be to pick one. And you don't have to do it right away. I mean, Bob always says, find the fastest horse, right? So you can move into a few different areas or a few different ideas for a while. But after a certain point, I think you have to pick and just decide, this isn't going to be my magnum opus. I'm not going, we put so much pressure on ourselves to do the book. And I'd just say, do a book. Try that.
I have one last thought for you guys. How many of you are interested in writing a book down the line? Isn't that great? That's great. So write your stories, the thing that you connect with, the ideas, write those stories and see which direction they're all pointing. And then when you get to the end, you'll say, this is the name of that book. You kind of find out what direction are all the stories in my life that matter the most going, and then just try to intersect that. Yeah, great question.
Hi, Hi, my name is Enrica, and my question for you is for Kim. And it is, you mentioned grace as a weapon. And maybe can you talk a little bit more about that? Maybe some examples of what that means and how you express that in your book.
Thank you. That is a beautiful question. An unfortunate question, right? That we have to ask that. The longer I was unraveling this, I found that lots of folks had grievous stories of how people had used grace to manipulate the word grace, not real grace, pretend grace, fake grace, faux grace. You might need to edit this out, but the bastardization of the word grace, I don't think that's too strong of a word. Folks using that to cover up all sorts of abuse and racism and gaslighting and all sorts of ways. All sorts of stories kept coming to me of people who would say, oh, I stayed in this really horrible place for a really long time because my pastor said I needed to extend grace. And that is not the grace that Jesus died for. It is not categorically no, full stop. Grace is a warrior. Grace turns on the light in a room. It does not turn it off, moonwalk out, and say, we'll pray for you. That's not how it works. The grace that Jesus did and does and completes for us is a completed, beautiful work that allows us total, bone-deep freedom. And somewhere along the line, just like all of God's best gifts, humans have used good things and warped them and said, oh, actually, this will be more convenient for us if you be quiet, and we're going to call it grace. I had a friend growing up who I have to be careful how much I include. Her story, sadly, is not super unique. She was a part of a church congregation. A person in leadership wooed her. He had his own family. He should not have been wooing her. He had no business doing this. And he used all sorts of spiritual language to encourage her to be quiet and to hurt her. And when this all came out, the church itself used a lot of placating language to say to her, you need to just forgive, we need to move on, and you need to extend grace. And that makes my body physically react because she had no choice in this matter, and it took her years to untangle the real Jesus out of that. So there is a chapter in this book called What It's Not. And it might be the most important chapter. It might be the most important one. The sweetest compliment I've been given thus far is from a dear friend who said to me, I had relegated this word to a shelf where I just wasn't going to take it off anymore because I've just seen it's been so overused and in such a dangerous way. It was kind of like a bumper sticker to me, but not a real thing. So the absolute heartbeat for me would be that we just take it off the shelf again. And
Nice.
amen.
Yeah.
I thought it was just God saying, yeah. That would be my heartbeat, that people would have the courage to take it off the shelf and decide who told me, who said this, who defined this for me. Because if we're looking at the way that God defined it, it's nothing but beautiful. So if there's been anything mixed up in the rest of that, it has to go.
Yeah. Very good. Very good.
Hi, my name is Jessica. My question is for either one of you, whoever wants to take this, or both of you if you want to answer it. When you guys said, or I can't remember exactly who said it, but it's, you're not a piñata, don't beat yourself up. I've noticed that I've had friends that I notice it in them when they're beating themselves up. And I'll say, you know, that Liar Liar movie? Like, you're not Jim Carrey. Like, what are you doing? I'm kicking my own. You know, do you mind? And your own booty. But I've noticed that I do it to myself. I can catch it in my friends really quick, and I'll just tell them that line, like, and it kind of like gets them to like realize, and they stop. Because I'm like, no, you can't talk to my friend, you know, Kim or whoever is my friend that way. Like you matter. And but with myself, I don't always do that. So do you have any tips around that?
I usually say to my own heart, be as kind to you, Kim, as you would to someone you love. And particularly for me, it's for my kids. I would never say to my kids, listen, I'd love to connect with you, but can you brush your hair and brush your teeth first? And I want your room to be clean. Like, I would never, ever, ever do that. I just want to hang out with them. I have an 18-year-old son who's gigantic. He's 6'3" and just all muscle. And I don't know how he is part of my bloodline, but when he's super funny, and I just love hanging out with him. When he says, Mom, let's go get coffee, I would never say, well, listen, I don't think I'm worthy. And I need to work on some things in my own heart and sin life before we hang out. I would say, let's go. I can't wait to get in the car with you. And so treating myself with as much kindness as I would to him or with him seems to work for me. It shakes me out of it. But I like the liar, liar line, and I'm stealing that.
Okay.
Bob, what would you say?
Oh, I'm just thinking of all the examples in the scriptures where Jesus spoke about who someone was turning into. Like, he didn't call Peter a wuss, he called him a rock when he was actually a wuss. It's like, I've never even heard of Jesus, and the rooster is going off like that boat horn. But then Jesus said, like, I'm building the entire church on you. That just gives me a lot of hope and a lot of like third-party confirmation that we're a mess. But notwithstanding that, we're not the average of the 3 most insecure people we know. So I'm not trying to constantly say, like, if I took Sweet Maria on a date, there was no first date. I just wanted to go straight to marriage. But what if like 3 or 4 minutes in, I said, hey, how am I doing? And then after another minute or two, I said, hey, how am I doing now? Like, that would have been the last date. And God is not constantly holding up this scorecard, you know, like 3, 2, 4. And so to your point, the point of the whole book, that God, we maybe don't need to be as hard on ourselves because God isn't scoring us. He's just available to us. And this is just more confirmation of our desperate need for a God that can just take us all messed up and needy. Yeah, great question.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
you guys.
Hello. I am coming out with my very first book this fall in November. So I'm really excited about it. I wanted to hear from both of you about the idea of grace. You kind of alluded to some of it a second ago, and the idea of not looking at reviews. What are some of the specific things that do you find come up for you in this process of releasing a book, feeling insecure, getting all your stuff out there for everyone, and how can I prepare for it and get myself in the right mind space for it?
Here, while you're thinking of your response, I thought immediately of Proverbs 4:23, above all else, guard your heart, because from it, your entire life will flow. And so as a strategy, when I have a book coming out, I get my head into the next book so that I'm actually leading the pheasant. Like, I'm just headed, because that book, when you release it, it will be in the rearview mirror for quite a while. So just staying current. Just say that if there's a comment or criticism or whatever, that's who Bob used to be. That's who I was a year and a half ago when I wrote it. But I've found new ways to fail. New screw-ups. So, yeah, so get current with my new screw-ups if you want to be critical, and it's a target-rich environment. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I just keep surrounding myself with people who know me, the real me. It's a funny thing. Maria and I were just talking about the social media piece and how that's such an important part of being an author right now, that you have to be out there and you have to be chatting. And I said out loud to my family a couple days ago when I was doing the dishes, raise your hand if you're so sick of hearing about me and my book. And I raised my hand because I'm so sick of talking of my own.
Yes.
I feel like I'm saying so much about me. Blech.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
yeah, I am so grateful to have phenomenal friends
Yeah.
who absolutely know that I am really not that great. No matter what happens, they love me, period. And so the output or production or sales numbers, all that stuff, that's not who I am. That took me a long time. That took me a few books in to remember, oh, actually, I'm still cleaning the toilets at my house, and that's a really good thing. So surrounding yourself with the people who know you and love you all the time, toilets and not. And then also, the time in the morning when it's just me and Jesus becomes like real important, because the rest of the day can go completely awry. But that time reminds me of who I am, and that this is like a blip. This isn't the end in any sense of the word. So
There's another really neat verse that's Zechariah 4:10. It says, "Don't despise small beginnings, because the Lord delights in watching the work begin." So just think about that as you're writing, those of you that want to write down, that heaven is leaning over the rails because God knows how it's going to turn out, but the angels don't. The angels only know whatever God tells them. Check it out. And so if you want to dazzle the angels, dazzle them with your authenticity. Just so as you're writing things down, just like I'm sure it just dazzles the angels that you're getting this book complete and out there. And for each of you, you've got some unique perspectives. Like, let's get that out there for people. Like, I know some of you've got some things to share. Like, get it out there. Don't be stingy about what you're learning. Great question.
Thank you so much.
Hi, friends. This is so much fun. I'm so awesome. I'm pretty happy. Me too. I'm so happy that Grace has captivated you. So amazing. But I'm wondering if I could hear stories from both of you of how God's grace has encountered you in this season and just moments in the secret place with Him. Yeah.
are you going to make her say her name, Taylor? Because you busted Ross on that.
My name's Ashley.
I just was talking about this yesterday with my mom. That I feel like right now in real time, I've learned anew. This is going to sound so ridiculous because I just wrote a whole book on it, but I've learned anew that grace is for me in every single season. Now, right now. Like not when the book's out, not when Mitch graduates from high school, not when Anna, my other daughter, comes back from Spain in a couple weeks, which is so cool. Not when, like there's always another, right? There's always another thing. Is that the coolest thing ever? It is evergreen. It's all the time. It's every morning. I'm learning that right now. And I'm also learning to give myself a little bit of a break. I'm not always so good about that in really busy seasons. So I've had to say out loud to my family multiple times. So about the takeout, it's happening again. Anybody have an order again? And what I'm finding is the people in my life are way more willing to give me a long leash than I give to myself. So everyone's completely surviving on MSG and sodium and dried pasta, and they're fine. They're just a little fluffier than they were, but they're fine, and we're all gonna be fine.
Yeah, I have a story that comes to mind, and it's an example of grace where people wanted to put you at ease. My grandparents were very poor. My grandfather was a fireman on the docks in San Francisco who never put out a fire. I don't even know if he knew how to. And my grandmother worked as a switchboard operator. And so they had long retired when I was little Bobby Goff, and they knew I was very needy, in need of like just comfort and all that. So they told me they lived in a castle, and I believed them. They painted their house pink with white trim, property values cratered. all around the block. They said, we have people who make our meals for us. It was named Swanson, evidently. And they had TV dinners every single night. And I'm like, they're living the life. They live in a castle. Somebody prepares all the meals for them. I mean, they died way too early with all the sodium. They could have been Lot's wife, but they would let me peel off the apple cobbler, when you peel it back to brown a little bit. And that was a big deal because they didn't have servants that did that. They let me do that. That was just a really neat example of them filling in the spaces in a really beautiful way in my life. Because I grew up thinking I lived in a castle. And there was just an exercise of grace on their part. Great question. Thank you very much.
I'm Mavari, and my question is actually for Kim. Sorry, Bob. That's so
And we're here for Kim.
like when you're writing your book and everything, did you ever have a moment like, oh, like you had like this like fear or something, and how did you get past that or through that, and how did you show yourself grace through that moment of this is scary, I'm writing this book, but you still did it anyways because we're all here today. So
So good. Thank you. What a great question, Mavari. Is that what you said? That's a wonderful question, and you are really beautiful. I would say I had about 8 million of those moments, not just one. It takes a minute in a book writing. Bob alluded to this, that sometimes you write and write and write and don't actually know where the lighthouse is. You just hope that these stories will connect. And so I actually wrote a lot. A book of this size is about 70,000 words. And I got about 30 in and thought, I better print this out. I don't know what it is. And so I printed it out like an old person would do with actual paper and put it chapter by chapter on the floor of my office. And I put a Post-it note on every chapter. And I limited the Post-it note to be one kind of quick takeaway. Like what do I know from, what do I want for the reader in this chapter? What's the thing I know? And when I did that I read all the Post-it notes out loud and sat back in my chair and said, oh, this is a book entirely about grace. I didn't know it until I saw it all out there. And there were so many panic moments all along the way. And there were some that came afterwards too. But once I had that clarity, I figured I need it so bad. I need this grace so badly. I'm just going to, on a wing and a prayer, assume that other people do too. And so typically when I have a freak out session, I try to think of my reader. Usually the freak out is me. It's usually when I'm thinking too much about me, like what happens with me, what happens with my reputation, what happens with, whatever. Is this wasted energy, wasted time? If I can pivot and think, what do I want for the person holding this in her house, in his house, then I get over it. Because I know what I want for him. I know what I want for her. And then it takes the spotlight off of all of my insecurities. So
that's so good.
Sometimes it works. I recommend it. Thank you. Great question.